Okay, then. The Article 6, Land Use, 601. We'll go through this, and then I'm going to ask Victor to explain why this is in here. And I said to Victor that I see we want this charter to be neutral in terms of not tipping the scale one way or the other with regard to what the current political balance is between. And for land use, I'm just going to broadly characterize it as environmentalists and developers. I know there are distinctions to be made, but those are two sort of general positions. Okay, 601, adoption of land use article of the Annotated Code of Maryland. A, it is the policy of Frederick County that the provisions of the land use article of the Annotated Code of Maryland that governed land use in the county prior to the effective date of this charter shall continue to apply as if they had been codified in the Code of Public Local Laws of Frederick County on the effective date of the charter. Okay. B, by 2016, the provisions that were considered applicable to the county on the effective date of the charter shall be codified in the Code of Public Local Laws of Frederick County. I'll run through the rest of it. C, it is the policy of Frederick County that whenever the provisions of the land use article are revised by the Maryland General Assembly, and the revisions would, in the absence of the adoption of this charter, impact and affect land use in the county, the revised provisions are to be promptly adopted by the county and codified in the Code of Public Local Laws of Frederick County. D, subsections A, B, and C of this section shall continue to remain in effect until this section is amended. E, this section is not intended, nor shall it be construed, to prohibit the county from complying with any requirement of state law that conflicts with the provisions of this section. So what does this accomplish?
Yeah.
It just flips it over, right?
Whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, the intent was to freeze everything the way it's done today in the county in Frederick County. So obviously what the concern is when you are a charter county, you have more flexibility to plan and zone. It's process. We're not talking about content. The content of your planning and zoning is probably not going to change. It's pretty much going to be the same. But how you go about planning and zoning is a little bit more flexible under a charter form than what you have now. And so what Frederick people were concerned with, they were afraid that the development community would basically revolt at the possibility that the way things have been done forever suddenly would be shifted under the new charter. So to signal that that wasn't going to happen, they put these provisions in saying, look, everything that goes on today will go on tomorrow. And the only way that that can change is if you get a charter amendment that changes this section. Now, all that sounds very reasonable, and it certainly sounded reasonable to them. It's entirely new. That's never happened before. Usually what we say in the charter, let me read you what we typically have in a charter, and this is almost in every charter. I think it probably, if not this language, this concept. We say something like, the provisions of the land use article as they relate to planning and zoning authority stand adopted on the effective date of the charter to the extent they're not repealed by any provision of the charter and shall remain in effect until repealed, amended, or superseded, which means that when the county wants to change a procedure, they can. But until then,
it doesn't have to be changed by the charter.
It's not changed by the charter. So that's typically what's in there. They thought, the Frederick people thought that was too loose. They said, no, we want to anchor it today. Let's go get a formal charter amendment before we can change anything, as opposed to an ordinance that would normally be able to change the procedure.
So when it says it is the policy of Frederick County that whenever the provisions of the land use article are revised by the Maryland General Assembly, and the revisions would in the absence of the adoption of this charter, so what are they in fact saying?
So what's happening is that, you know, the General Assembly will change the land use provision. So right now you're governed under the land use article. So every year the General Assembly fiddles with that land use article. So what this means, that paragraph means, is that when those provisions occur, the Frederick County people are going to go right along with those changes that are going on in state law. They're not going to resist them. They're just going to adopt those things.
And you have to do that, you're supposed to do that anyway.
Well,
right?
you have to do that as a code county, but as
Yeah.
a charter county, as I say, you have a little bit more flexibility about whether you have to go. Most of your procedures don't have to be followed. There are certain things that have to be followed, but most of them are pretty flexible after you have a charter form of government. And usually, as I say, usually there is so much concern about land use that whatever changes are done are done very cautiously, and usually piecemeal. Every once in a while, in the past, there have been commissions established to study, how we might want to do it in the future compared to how we're doing it now. So there's all sorts of variations, options about how you wade into changing the code. But the idea behind a charter is we're not changing anything because we don't have the expertise to change anything. So all we're going to do is one way or another, either we say it in our transition, nothing will be changed until ordinances are changed, or we say it the way Frederick did, nothing will change until the charter is changed.
Which is harder.
Well, let me ask you, let's assume that the General Assembly, and maybe Adam, maybe you know the answer to this or have a different viewpoint on this, the General Assembly passes some sort of change. And without this language being in there, because this language says the county will promptly adopt it, let's say that your council members, a majority of them, didn't want to adopt it. Without this language, then they could, at least some of these state provisions, they could say, well, we're not adopting that.
Right.
Which if Frederick was drafting now, they probably wouldn't put that language in because they're fighting the state on the maps and the rain tax. So I find it fascinating that they put that in there because it would have been about the time that was being talked about.
Let me
right?
tell you,
Right
from an attorney standpoint, neither the county attorney or I thought it was a good idea to do that. But for policy reasons, the Frederick guys said, no, we're going to do this. And they got everybody to agree with it. So, from a legal perspective, it's not so good. We want a little bit more flexibility. From a political perspective, you have to sort of evaluate that for yourself.
Well, let me just before I get there, I asked you about a month and a half ago to sort of you agreed to summarize.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Wills. I was starting to do that, and I got sidetracked.
Okay, so you didn't have a chance to do it.
But I will do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What summarized?
He wanted to go ahead and articulate what would you.
No, I just wanted to know. Charter governments are not required to adhere to all of the provisions of 66B, the land use article, and I just wanted to know which ones, what provisions are they, and what effect do they have? Do they give us more flexibility? Do they give us more freedom to plan? Do they, that's all I want to know.
What I'm going to do is, because it's so vast, I will just sort of.
I don't want you to make a big deal about it. I just want a little summary.
I'm just going to give you an
right.
idea of what the big issues are and what you're going to have freedom to do as opposed to what you won't have. Yeah.
That's all I want.
Yeah.
Now, can you read? I'm sorry. Can you read that? Go ahead.
I was saying that would be.
Can you
very
just read
helpful.
that the other version, the
one,
simple one again?
The simple one.
Yeah.
I like the simple one.
I kind of like it too.
Easy one.